Hello. How amazing was that episode? Which is one of my favorite hours of TV this year. My name is Henry Goldblatt. I'm editor-in-chief of Entertainment Weekly. I'm so happy to be here with you and so happy to be talking to our very special guest today, Darren Criss, who's the star of American crime story, The Assassination of Gianni Versace. Let's welcome Darren.
Hey guys.
Hey, thanks so much for taking the time today.
This is really cool. First of all, thank you guys for coming. I just had a memory that I haven't thought about until just this moment. The last time I did a SAG Foundation thing, or at least a Q&A, was, I don't know, there wasn't a screen or anything. I think people were just indulging me to talk about random shit. And then I left from here. I went straight to, I believe it was like Glee tour. And I felt like such a rock star because I was like, all right, like in the SAG building, like talking about acting. And then I got on a plane to Vegas to do an arena show. I was like, what the fuck? That was insane, yeah.
You were a rock star.
Emphasis on were, or past tense, was. It's over now.
Well, this project is exquisite, and congratulations on all its success, and it's been really wonderful. And I was wondering, I wanted to get started by asking you, how familiar were you with Andrew Cunanan's story beforehand, and what's the first thing you did to kick off your research into the role?
So I'm used to my theater voice because we're in a small space, but I'll use this because I think it's being filmed. So for the audio guy, let's give him a break. Or her. What was it? So I think what I knew was as much as I think most people knew, and by most I mean the vast majority of people in the world, which is very little. I think unless you are in fashion or in entertainment or you lived in Miami in the 90s, you wouldn't have known much beyond that Gianni was murdered on the steps of his home, very tragically. But that's about it. And the thing I forget, because the show is such a mass exposure, I live in a metropolitan area around a certain group of people that knew that fact, but I've spoken to a much younger generation of kids, whether teenagers or early 20s, or people that had nothing to do with those things I mentioned, entertainment, fashion, that say stuff like, oh, I didn't even know that Gianni Versace was murdered, or that he was even dead. That's crazy. They don't even know that. So in that regard, there's plenty of compelling elements of the story because there's so much that people don't know. So to make a short answer long, I just knew that he was murdered. That was sort of part of pop cultural history that I was aware of, but that was about it. I vaguely knew in the recesses of my brain that he was a half Filipino kid, which was of note to me as a half Filipino kid myself. So that was about it. But yeah, once you start diving into it, you go, wow, how did I not know this? This is insane. And then once you realize the reasons that you didn't know about it, which I think we should explore in our show, which is a lot to do with homophobia in the media and in government bodies and yada yada. So there's a lot of reasons why this wouldn't have reached the frontal lobes of our experience of what was going on in the country. Research. The book, this miniseries is based off of Maureen Orth's book, Vulgar Favors, which, if this story fascinates you, if you really want to get into it, the book's called Vulgar Favors. And what's so fascinating about Maureen's work is that she was a journalist for Vanity Fair, and she was following this crime spree well before he had killed Gianni Versace. And what's so wild is she wrote this a very notable article in Vanity Fair in, I want to say, May or April of 1997, so a few months before he'd killed Gianni, where she's talking about this crime that nobody knew because he was targeting gay men, and why aren't we talking about this? And he's on America's Most Wanted list. Like, this is insane. Keep an eye out for this guy. And we know now, you're reading, it's like, oh my God, she was ahead of the game. Like, this guy was just living out in the open. He was on the lam. So anyway, she's done extensive research on not only the lives of the victims and their families, and Andrew's life and the Versace's life. And it's really fascinating. It's really thick. So that was my main source of information, because there's not a lot of other information to go on.
The show is called The Assassination of Gianni Versace, but it really is the Andrew Cunanan story. And at what point in preparation or filming did you realize, wow, my character is sort of front and center here?
Well, I think that it was always the case, but not. The show, all my scripts said Cunanan Versace, or Versace Cunanan. That was the name of the show. So to me, it was always this juxtaposed character piece about these two brilliant men in their own ways that were more connected than they I think they both realized, or at least making that connection for an audience for the purposes of our storytelling. So it was always about both of them. And even though we do focus a lot on Andrew, I think the idea and the symbol of what Gianni Versace stands for is so pervasive throughout Andrew's life that it does feel like he has a presence. And that's not just me trying to be nice. Edgar and I only had very little to do with each other on set, but there were a lot of moments that we shot stuff without each other where the moments we did have each other had an effect on what we were doing. But you know, I think the name change was very, I think it was a really cool move because Ryan made a really good point. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but people said, well, why is it called the Assassination of Gianni Versace? And he made really good, he had an answer where he said that an assassination is somebody who takes one's life to prove a point, and it's much larger than sort of a crime of, well, it is a crime of passion, but it's there's sort of a political edge to it, and I think Andrew really knew what he was targeting when he ultimately decided to aim for Gianni Versace, to take down the highest symbol of that which he couldn't have and wanted to be a part of, and forever embed his name and his legacy to his. I mean, there's a huge sort of political bullet, literally and figuratively, to what he was trying to do. So I kind of like that they made it more about that, and it's a sort of bait and switch of you thinking that it's about Gianni Versace's life, but it is about the death of not only the man himself, but a culture and someone who obsessed over a culture of excess and how that got the better of him and the man himself. So there's a whole lot of stuff that I knew was going to centralize around him, but that didn't make it any less or more interesting to me.
I want to talk about some very specific scenes. There are a lot of memorable scenes in this miniseries, one of which is you tie up and torture Mike Farrell, who plays Lea Michele, who's one of Cunanan's victims. How do you even begin to approach filming such an intense scene like that?
That was probably the most difficult thing to do, just because I think people get really wrapped up, no pun intended, over the I guess the distance that these actions have from us. You go, oh God, this is so strange or maybe it isn't, maybe that's your thing, I don't know. And it could very, very well be. I mean, I think we distance ourselves from things that we think are just so out of our comfort zone, but they're grown from very similar seeds that we all feel. I think Andrew's particular penchant for sort of subcultural S&M culture comes from a lack of dominance in his life. I think it's very much connected to, someone who's maybe felt put in a submissive position, whether it was from his socioeconomic background or ethnic background or religious background, whatever it is. This was an opportunity for him to be the dominating side of this. What I'm getting at is the things that kind of freak me out or make me feel uncomfortable is not the action, it's the stuff that it's built from this very tragic longing for something that he can't have and needs to manifest in this sort of violent way. That algorithm is the thing that makes me go, ugh. Like any of the literal stuff, again, violence or these extreme examples of behavior, they're simple emotions. Those are base actions. Rage and violence are very basic primary colors that we all have instant access to. It's the stuff that builds to it. The shame and the feeling slighted and being tortured. That's the stuff that just really makes me go, oh, this poor kid. So that's the stuff that I really had to wash off. So when you deal with someone like Mike Farrell, who's playing a deeply closeted, a good man that did wonderful things and did wonderful things for his community and his family and did very much love his wife. Just waging this psychological warfare on America's Mike Farrell,
Exactly.
on BJ Honeycutt, if you're a MASH fan, is that there's a dirtiness to that feels much darker than the actual physical things, because that stuff's all technical on set. It's fake, and it's all this stuff that looks much scarier on camera. But that stuff is literal and it's technical. Again, the real stuff is the more mental warfare that you're playing with a human being. That, I'll say something and see Mike sort of unravel, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I would never say that to you, man. I don't, that's the stuff that freaks me out. Yeah.
On the flip side, what was your favorite scene to film, and what made it special to you?
It's tough. Look, actors are only as good as the moments and the scenes they get, right? So just having scenes. I'm a theater guy, and so when you really have this clay or this dough that you can really knead out, that is just such a joy. That many actors here will relate. It's rare. You get scenes like that, and you're like, oh, please don't cut this. Or chop it up as they do for television. I think the most exciting stuff for me was getting to work with actors that were equally as excited to be there. I think everybody, even someone as decorated as Penelope Cruz or Ricky Martin or Edgar Ramirez, everybody was excited to be here in a way I think maybe they hadn't been in a while, because it was a new frontier for a lot of people. I think Penelope was really excited to be part of like a Ryan Murphy TV thing. That is, it was weird that I was the veteran. That was a strange thing. Everybody had stripes to earn, and that gives a really good environment, because everybody wants to prove themselves in a way that that just puts a bit of adrenaline into the piece. So with that being said, actors like Cody Fern, who comes from a small town in Australia, here he is in the United States with a really amazing role that I think he knocked out of the park. And so seeing him work and getting to be alongside that is so fun and inspiring. John Briones, who plays Modesto Cunanan, here's a guy who's been acting for a long time, but there's a limitation for a man of his age and a man of his ethnicity, that there is a limited amount of roles that are given to who he is. And I'm sure that's been a huge obstacle in his career. And for a man that talented, it's such a fucking thrill to be like, just see someone knock that shit down, and to really bring the goods to a really rich and complex role. And to see him work it just kicks you up a notch. So those are my favorite moments, is getting to be in the ring with people who are fresh and ready to go with their best gloves on.
I absolutely adored the structure of this show, the way it was narratively told backward, basically. And I was wondering, for a viewer, it's really exciting and enticing. I imagine for an actor, it can be a little difficult in terms of filming stuff out of order and what have you. So what were the challenges that presented?
Well, I think, again, people in here would know this. Nothing is really ever shot in order anyway, unless you have the luxury of doing, I don't know, if you have your line producers somehow finagled to shoot and book every availability of every space and every actor in chronological order, which would be a miracle. If not a complete, I'd be really suspicious if that ever happened. So things are always shot out of order, but yes, on the grand scheme of things, because we were going backwards, it does present a challenge, but I'm sort of a glutton for punishment, that I enjoy that. I enjoy this sort of emotional Tetris that one has to play. If you're in a TV series that goes for an indefinite amount of time and you don't know where your character is going, which is one of the main pitfalls a lot of actors say about, you dial it at 10 at episode 6, but all of a sudden episode 22, you have this other moment that completely sort of undermines what you did. So you kind of have to be cognizant of the full spectrum of a piece. And it's nice when you have 9 episodes where you know where it's going. You can kind of clock where each one is. So I enjoyed it because, there's certain moments that you play. Again, I'll use my dial metaphor again, but knowing that we have to play this at 4 because we have to get to 6 then, and then we have to get to 11 here. So you don't want to blow your wad here and not get back to where you're going. I think that made sense.
Yeah.
So it's fun, but again, that's the luxury of having 9 episodes to do something. So you can kind of figure it out, and it's also the luxury of a story that you know what's happened, even though the scripts aren't there. There's historic. You know the facts, so you know where you have to get to. The thing I liked about the order of stuff, and it didn't occur to me until I saw the final episode, is that, and maybe I'm wrong. I'd be very interested if anybody wants to counter this, but it was sort of an unintentional redemption story. In this, we're not trying to redeem him, but I think what has happened is so many people have come up to me saying, I felt weird that I was kind of feeling for this guy, and it was odd. And what that's less about my performance and more about I think people's innate desire for compassion, and which is being the bleeding heart idealist I am, is a very encouraging sentiment, because you realize that we're not trying to forgive him. We're not trying to exonerate him. That is not a requirement, and I would never dream that upon anybody. We can all agree, obviously, what he's done is fucking awful, and it's horrific. It's the worst. However, maybe as storytellers or as actors, we start with him at his worst. So if we go backwards, you're almost searching for the redeeming qualities to somehow make sense of it and just get a little closer to I don't know, humanizing anything that we so conventionally deem as inhuman. I kind of like that, because he doesn't actually redeem himself, but it's the same thing as seeing, the redemption tale of a boxer that has to get back up on his feet again. It's the same thing. We're waiting for him as we see him younger and younger. The part where we go, and this is where he got screwed, and it's someone else's fault. And anyway,
I would respectfully disagree. I think that your performance is exactly what puts a lot of empathy into it, and congratulations on that. It's terrific.
Thanks, man. Great.
I want to talk to you about some of the houseboat scenes. First of all, that looked an awful lot like dog food that you were eating. What actually was it?
It's dog food. It's dog food, yeah. I'm crazy. No, it's not. It's corned beef hash, y'all. Movie magic. I'm not gonna eat some fucking dog food. You crazy? No way. No, I wish I could say I'm that hardcore. No, give me the dog food. I must perform. It's not real unless I have dog food. No, they had the option of what I wanted, and it was during the morning too. So it was like, yeah, some corned beef hash. Throw some eggs in there if you feel like it. Yeah, it was fine.
I don't think, imagine most people on Earth do not get to film their own suicide scene. And tell us about what that's like.
Oh, yeah, man. I walked in right during that part, and I'm fuck, I hate that. I don't want to watch that. I mean, again, these are things that are so technical, and this is a really, I was going to say it's a weird comparison, but it's kind of the same schematics. Is, people always ask, like, during sex scenes or anything, was it tough? Like, did you get a boner? And I don't think I've ever been in that position, because I don't think I've ever had, all my sex scenes are tying guys up with tape, so I can't say that it's happened. Not to say you're not incredibly arousing. But the point you didn't either? Oh, okay, good. I think my publicist is like, stop it. What are you saying? The point of that sort of silly comparison is it's so technical that the thing that makes something scary or something sexy is that element is immediately taken out of it, because you're surrounded by like 100 people. It's very blocked out. So obviously the things like, to take a life, oh my God, like hopefully, and I don't think any of us can relate to that, but this is something you can barely even think about when you're worried about the CO2 in the tank of the gun being loaded and making sure everyone's earplugs are in. And there's a technicality to it that kind of takes the scariness out of it, at least for me. So what was the question? The suicide scene. Yeah. So again, when it's something, it's so scary to put a gun in your mouth, even if you're kidding, is a scary thing. It's very scary. But the thing that made it so heartbreaking for me is, again, I just shaved my head, which is something I hadn't done since I was like 21. It's like 10 years ago. And I'm like looking in the mirror, and you just, you see this kid at his wit's end, And I don't know, it's very sad. The whole thing just makes me sad. I've said this so many times, but all the stuff that can freak you out or get scared by, I don't get freaked out by the show. I just get really endlessly sad. So luckily I know that it's a character. And I don't know, it's an interesting question. You're making me think about it the first time of what it is to shoot a suicide scene. I think because it's contextualized by this story, yeah, I've said it 9 times. It's very sad. What do you want me to say? It's fucking depressing.
Your fans on Twitter had a lot of questions. I want to dive into some of those. At Marky Mood asked, and I got a lot of people ask this one, how did you rip the duct tape off your face and hair without hurting yourself?
Well, movie magic. It was actually corned beef hash tape. No, it's funny. I had never done a screen test before. I didn't know that was a thing. Ryan Murphy moves so fast that I'd heard that word before, where so and so did the screen test with so. It's like this buzzy thing that happens to Hollywood people. Never did it in my life. And I remember I was shooting a music video for my band, and I was so mad because they called me in on this day that I'd spent all this time and money on creating, and I had to leave, and I was like, what the fuck do you need a screen test for? Like, we're good to go. And it was to test the tape, and to get a quality of tape. And I think in a lot of, if you are into the S&M scene, and hey, way to go, because what I've learned is that for a lot of this sort of simulation, there's really safe ways to do stuff. So the tape is an actual duct tape. It has a certain adhesion that isn't going to rip your skin off. And I haven't had the privilege myself of attending whatever might be going on behind closed doors with tape. And if that's your thing, again, rock and roll. Apparently, there's a very safe tape to use. I don't know where they got it from, but it comes right off. So that was but we had to test it to make sure that people could breathe and everything. I mean, you had a hard time with it. You almost had, you threw up. But that was because you're breathing really hard. Yeah, I'm bad. Sorry about that.
At Enza Fazlagic asks, Darren, can you choose a scene from the show that you're not a part of that was your favorite?
There's so many. What was so cool is all my stuff was separate from the Versaces. So watching the show was so exciting because I got to watch all these actors that I love do their thing. So all those scenes I really liked. I mean, getting to see Penelope Cruz do anything is so cool. So any of her stuff, it was really a thrill. I think them recreating the runway from one of the shows was pretty cool. But just anything with any of those actors. I love watching Finn work. I think he's so brilliant. I love watching. I mean, I spent so much time on set that it was nice to realize the scope of our show. So basically anything that I wasn't in, I really looked forward to watching.
At Darren Criss 0 asks, we all know you can sing, so how hard was it not to sound good? By the way, you did amazing work. For a second, I thought you couldn't sing anymore.
Wait, I was trying really hard to sing well. So what are you saying? No, I guess, well, they say it is really, if you have good pitch and you're a singer or if you're a musician, it's actually really hard to be off pitch because your brain defaults to what is correct. So yeah, I guess you got to be pretty good to be pretty bad. I don't know. I try not to be egregiously awful. But it's tough. You have to rewrite a song in your mind to be like a semitone under or above. I'm glad that didn't go unappreciated.
And one more from Twitter. At Dylan and Lucas asked, did you keep Andrew's glasses after filming ended, or did you keep any props whatsoever?
No, I don't want none of that shit, man. I don't need that in my life. I got enough emotional scarring as it is. I will say I wear contact lenses and I have really shitty vision, and so I have my collection of glasses that I enjoy for fashionable reasons. And so now I have, anytime I have remotely Andrew Cunanan looking glasses, I'm like, damn it, I can't wear those anymore. It's too bad.
The audience here has asked some really good questions too. I want to turn to those. Prince Little Wolf asks, what job did you feel was the turning point in your career, and when did you feel, quote unquote, you made it?
That's a really interesting question. Well, they happen in bits and pieces, and I think it happens with more conventional things that apply to the people around you, where they say, you joke like, oh man, you made it when blah, 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 and sort of as a cheeky adage of, there's things, seeing yourself on a billboard or in a magazine or hearing a song you've sung somewhere. I mean, those sound like pretty fantastical things, and that's not lost on me. That's pretty incredible, but they seem so, they're not in my control. So they seem like these sort of ancillary events that are flattering and exciting, but it's not like you made it. I literally did not make that billboard. I literally did not press record on this song, and I literally did not. I'm not the editor-in-chief of this magazine. So for me, honestly, I think this is probably the first time in my life I've really felt that sense, because I've worked and waited my entire life for this moment, and that has to do with the quality of this project, with the exposure that it's had. I think with the pathos and gravitas of this role and this story. It's the first time my enthusiasm and passion and interest in something has matched those of the people experiencing it. And that's not to say that I was so happy I loved being on Glee, and I've loved many of the work I've done on Broadway, and I'm very proud of those things. But there's maybe a disparity. Oh, stop it. But there's a disparity, maybe not everybody who's watching Glee or not, you do a Broadway show that's, New York, or it's on tour. It's very specific for the audience, and to have something to talk about with so many people. And again, this isn't like the ego of like, I just want people to see what I'm doing, because that's not it at all. It's about being part of a project that I think is bigger than the sum of my parts, and working with people that have inspired me to get to where I am. So, if you look at someone like Penelope Cruz, even though we didn't have any scenes together, there we were on the team together, on the relay race, looking at it like we're on the front lines together. This is someone that has inspired me my whole life. And so to suddenly, unbeknownst to her, she's been a part of my narrative my whole life. And so now to be a part of hers and to create a new circle of inspiration is like, that's what it's all about. So that's what feels like I've made it. I've worked here. I get to be with these people. Here we go. So it's more about the personal victories of, getting to really tangibly hold the fruits of your labor, as opposed to seeing other people make that fruit and have it around town.
Rosie Foss asks, how did you get your SAG card?
Well, my first gig was on a short-lived TV show on ABC called Eastwick, which obviously you're all here to hear about, right? You're all Eastwick fans. So no, that was it. I mean, it's a much larger answer. Yes, that was the job that booked me, that warranted the card itself. But if you really want to know the answer, it's hard work and being nice to people. I don't know. It's like I studied, and I tried to surround myself with the right people, but with just enough wrongness to make it fun. Definitely don't applaud that. But I studied and I worked hard. What can I say? And then I came to LA, and I got very, 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 very lucky. But only when that moment of luck happened, I was ready for it.
Emily asks, "What is your ideal next project?"
Something. Somebody said the other day to me when they were talking about. They use the word breakout, and that's a very exciting word because it's been applied to different things that I've done. When my first thing that ever was in like the media, I remember seeing something that wasn't just on my parents' refrigerator, where I saw it in an actual magazine stand was a musical that I'd worked on called A Very Potter Musical, and somebody said that there was like a breakout moment for me and my friends, breakout, and that was cool. Yeah, we're breaking out of wherever the fuck we were before. Then Glee happened. Oh, breakout for this guy. This is a new thing. Then I did a show on Broadway. It was a breakout for that, and everything just seemed to just a huge acne breakout all over the place. And then somebody said that for this, and what's exciting about that sort of, I guess, that, yeah, I'm breaking out a lot. I'm I've got a lot of hormonal issues. What's exciting about that batting average is that it means that I'm sort of constantly giving somebody something new and something that is a departure from something else. And that's out of my hands and more about the projects that I've been lucky enough to be invited on. But if I can keep that out, that would be really great. As many left turns as humanly possible. I sort of thrive on doing things that people, every project, I think for any artist anywhere, whatever field, it's a constant negotiation between what you know you're capable of and what you'd like to do with what people are willing to see you as. And you kind of have to meet them somewhere in the middle. And so if that can constantly be hard left turns or hard right turns, so we can keep breaking out, we can keep moving. That's the ideal role. So, from this, like, I don't know, put me on a horse, give me a sword, throw me in Middle Earth. I don't know, like something totally weird and different. Like
maybe a guest starring role in Outlander or something like that.
Sure, sign me up. Give me a Scottish accent. Let's roll, baby.
Unfortunately, we have to wrap up. Before we do, I want to ask you, you're going on tour with Lea Michele this summer. Tell us about that.
Oh, you don't want to hear about that.
We do want to hear that.
So, I'm going on tour with some up-and-coming actress named Lea Michele. I felt like being charitable. No. I'm very, very lucky to be on a bill with her. My God. Definitely can sell out more tickets. If it was just by myself, I don't think I would do as well. So Lea is, we share a lot of musical history. If you're unaware, she did a lot of Broadway. I've done a bit of Broadway. We both were on Glee together. She's made some solo records. I've made some solo records. I've written songs for her. So there's been a lot of connective tissue that was worth exploring, and I enjoy going on the road. I enjoy performing. It's a fun way to bring communities together, and it's just a few dates. It's like 12 dates. Hopefully we can do like a West Coast leg, but it's mostly Northeast, Midwest, and we start next week. Go to Nashville next Tuesday. So it's kind of like last time I was here. I'm not going directly to it, but it's pretty close to the same sort of the same sort of series of events. But if any of you happen to be in any of those cities, it's the LMDC tour. I would love to have you, especially for the venues that aren't selling as well. Please come. There's plenty of room.
Well, on behalf of this audience, I imagine we want you to do some West Coast dates too. So see if you can make that happen.
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you guys for being here. This is really cool.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Nice. Yeah.
And let's give a round of applause for Darren, please.